Today, we will witness the true love story between a girl and an alien. A woman is suddenly drawn toward a strange, piercing scream coming from a water tank. Just as she steps closer, a large hand slams forcefully against the glass of the tank. Before she can properly see what is inside, the supervisor calls her away and orders her to clean the men's restroom. Moments later, the rude supervisor barges into the restroom. Without any shame, he begins urinating right in front of her. After finishing, he doesn't even bother to wash his hands. Watching this, Eliza feels deep disgust, but because she has been mute since birth, she is unable to protest. She can only glare at him with hatred. This is her only form of resistance. What she doesn't know is that the supervisor's punishment is about to arrive very soon. After Eliza finishes cleaning the restroom, she heads out to throw away the trash with her friend Zelda. Suddenly, a blood-curdling scream echoes from the laboratory. Moments later, the supervisor comes running out, clutching his hand, which is drenched in blood. The sight terrifies both Eliza and Zelda. They begin wondering what could have possibly happened inside the lab. They continue discussing it until lunchtime. Before they can even start eating, the assistant supervisor rushes over and orders them to clean the laboratory. Seeing blood spread across the floor, both women panic and try to finish the job quickly. As Eliza throws a bucket of water, two severed fingers suddenly float out from a corner. Horrified, Zelda immediately runs outside to call for help, while Eliza stays behind to keep an eye on the fingers. As she waits nervously, a sound of movement comes from the water tank. Driven by curiosity, she slowly approaches the tank and looks inside. There she sees a gigantic humanoid merman. She is about to move closer when Zelda and the assistant supervisor rush in and stop her. They explain that this humanoid merman was discovered in a dense Amazon rainforest in an ancient water reservoir connected to the ocean. The local tribes worship it as a god and believe it possesses divine powers that control rainfall and the number of fish, thereby maintaining ecological balance. However, obsessed with gaining control over the creature, the supervisor captured it and brought it to the laboratory for experiments. During this process, the humanoid fish bit off 2 of his fingers. After saying this, the assistant supervisor warns Eliza that the creature is extremely dangerous and tells her to stay away from it. Eliza suppresses her curiosity. Once her cleaning work is finished, she returns home as usual. Eliza has been mute since birth. There are 3 deep scars on her throat. It is said that when she was not even a month old, her parents abandoned her near a body of water. Later, an orphanage took her in and somehow raised her. After getting a job, she began living alone in an apartment above an old movie theater in the city. There, she befriends her gay neighbor, Giles. Being isolated from society, they understand each other's pain very well. They often go together to a cake shop to buy sweets. Eliza buys desserts purely for the taste, while Giles uses every visit as an excuse to talk to the shop owner, with whom he has long been in love. After returning home, they eat sweets while watching dance programs on television. Watching beautiful tap dances, Eliza cannot stop herself and begins dancing as well. This is one of her everyday pleasures. After dancing, she grows tired and falls asleep. Since she works the night shift, she usually wakes up in the evening. After waking up, she makes a simple sandwich using boiled eggs and sets aside a portion for her neighbor Giles. Giles often spends the entire day immersed in his painting. He was so busy that many times he couldn't even find the time to cook dinner at night. Every time Eliza left the house, she reminded him again and again not to forget to eat his dinner. One day, as she was passing by a shoe store, a beautiful pair of high heels stopped her in her tracks. She stood there admiring them for so long that she was almost late for work. Fortunately, her friend Zelda, who always looked after her like an older sister, was already standing by the time card machine, clocking in on her behalf. Thanks to that, Eliza managed to mark her attendance on time. After that, the two of them began their cleaning duties together as usual. During a break, Eliza once again found herself thinking about the male mermaid. Driven by curiosity, she quietly slipped into the laboratory. From her pocket, she took out an egg left over from dinner and gently tapped it twice. Hearing the sound, the male mermaid emerged. Having been repeatedly harmed by humans, he was still wary of Eliza. Noticing this, she carefully placed the egg on the ground and stepped back. It was as if the mermaid sensed her kindness. After accepting the offering, he returned to the water. From that day on, Eliza began secretly visiting the male mermaid more and more often. Each time, she brought a prepared egg, played music, and quietly waited for him to appear. Gradually, a deep bond formed between a human and a male mermaid. Sometimes, when Eliza stopped the music, the mermaid would rise to the surface and gesture for her to play it again. At times, Eliza would dance to the melody. Her graceful movements often left the mermaid staring at her in awe. Eliza, too, deeply enjoyed spending time with the innocent and kind-hearted creature. One day, while dancing, she suddenly stepped closer to the tank and gazed deeply into the mermaid's eyes. Though she could not speak, her eyes clearly expressed her concern and affection for him. She believed that these beautiful days would last forever, but happiness did not endure for long. One day, when Eliza arrived to see the mermaid again, she found him shackled in chains and brutally tortured, his entire body covered in wounds. As she moved forward forward to free him. The sound of footsteps suddenly echoed outside. She immediately hid behind the tank. The supervisor had arrived. Ever since losing 2 fingers during the last incident, he had been burning with a desire for revenge against the mermaid. Today, he had come prepared, carrying an electric baton to punish him. Unable to endure the continuous torture, the mermaid collapsed unconscious. Just as the supervisor was about to deliver a final fatal shock, the senior official of the laboratory and a scientist suddenly entered the room. The officials believed that by studying the mermaid's amphibious body structure, they could develop advanced technology that could be used in weapon production, technology that might play a decisive role in winning the space race. The supervisor supported this idea wholeheartedly. Only the scientist opposed it. In truth, she was a spy sent to the United States by the Soviet Union. The Soviet government feared that if America gained any revolutionary technology from this creature, it would secure an overwhelming advantage in the space competition. That was why she had been sent to gather intelligence. However, as she grew closer to the mermaid, compassion awakened within her, especially after she had secretly witnessed the bond between Eliza and the male mermaid. She became convinced that the mermaid was not a lower life form, but an exceptionally intelligent being. When she heard the official speak of dissecting him, she stepped forward in protest, pleading for the mermaid to be spared. But the official was unmoved. To him, the male mermaid was nothing more than an experimental specimen. Meanwhile, Eliza, who is hiding behind the water tank, overhears that the male merman will soon be taken away for dissection. Hearing this completely shatters her from within. She makes up her mind that no matter what happens, she will rescue the male merman and get him out. However, the strength of a single human is limited. After a lot of thought, she decides to seek help from her neighbor and close friend Giles. But Giles is not free at that moment. A few days earlier, after working hard for several days, he had completed a painting and enthusiastically gone to deliver it to a customer. However, the cunning customer rejected it, saying that Giles's art style had become outdated and even demanded that the color of the cake in the painting be changed to green. Not only did the customer declare the painting completely worthless, but he also told Giles that he would never amount to anything in life. Feeling utterly dejected, Giles takes his painting to a nearby cake shop and pours out his sorrow to the shop owner. Surprisingly, the owner not only praises his painting, but also tells him, "You are one of the most refined customers I have ever seen." Hearing this, a smile returns to Giles's face. But suddenly, the owner's expression changes. He aggressively throws out a black customer who has just entered the shop. Witnessing this, Giles's eyes are open. He tells the owner that he should not practice racism. In response, the owner abuses Giles as well and throws him out of the shop. At that moment, the false layers of humanity become painfully clear to Giles. He deeply realizes that Eliza is the only person who truly understands him, values him, and treats him as an equal. He now also begins to understand Eliza's attachment to the merman. As soon as this realization hits him, he rushes back home, sincerely apologizes to Eliza from the bottom of his heart, and agrees to help her rescue the merman. The next day at work, according to the plan, Eliza uses a plant-based chemical to slightly shift the laboratory corridor cameras, creating a blind spot in the surveillance. She then quickly enters the lab while pushing a garbage trolley. However, she is confused when she sees the heavy iron chains tightly bound around the male merman's body. Just then, the scientist suddenly arrives. In fact, the scientist had already informed the Soviet government about the plan to dissect the merman. The government concluded that saving the male merman would be extremely difficult, so they ordered the scientist to kill him with a poisonous injection and then dissolve his body in acid, leaving nothing behind that could be used for research. But the kind-hearted scientist did not want to kill the merman. While he was thinking about how to save him, he noticed that the surveillance camera was moving. He immediately runs in with the keys, unlocks the chains with Eliza's help, and hands her a large container filled with seaweed. He explains that the creature must first be kept in salt water and then covered with seaweed to recreate his natural habitat and keep him safe. After explaining everything, the scientist, Tom, goes to cut off the power supply to buy Eliza some time to escape. Meanwhile, Eliza places the male merman in the garbage trolley and moves toward the delivery area. But at a turn, she suddenly runs into Zelda. Zelda had noticed that Eliza was missing from work that day, which made her suspicious that Eliza was hiding something. She had even punched out on Eliza's behalf. While searching for her, she ends up here. When Zelda realizes that Eliza is trying to help the male merman escape, she advises her not to do it. But seeing Eliza's unwavering determination, Zelda eventually gives in and joins the rescue mission. Up to this point, everything has been going according to plan. But suddenly, a problem arose on Giles's side. His fake pass was recognized by the security guard at the gate. The guard asked Giles to get out of the car for inspection. Just as Giles was unsure what to do, the scientist Tom, who had already sabotaged the power system, arrived in time and immediately knocked the guard unconscious with a poison needle. After that, everyone worked together and successfully completed the rescue mission. However, the plan that had seemed absolutely perfect was accidentally witnessed by the supervisor hiding behind the CCTV monitors. In fact, even before the scientists damaged the electrical system, the supervisor had already seen the confrontation between Giles and the guard on the cameras. When he sensed something was wrong and rushed to the scene, what he encountered came as a complete shock to him as well. The supervisor flew into a rage. After returning home, Elisa immediately prepared a water-based environment according to the scientist's instructions so that the mermaid could survive. When she saw that the mermaid was finally able to breathe normally, she felt a great sense of relief. However, the mission was not yet fully complete because the city canal would connect to the sea only on the last day of the month. Elisa planned to release the mermaid back into the ocean on the very day the canal opened to the sea. Until then, all she could do was wait. The next morning, she marked the date and location for returning the mermaid to the sea on her calendar and then went to work as usual. Meanwhile, chaos had broken out in the laboratory due to the theft of the mermaid. The supervisor suspected that it was an inside job, so he ordered an investigation into the entry and exit records of all employees from the previous night. Since Zelda had secretly clocked in for Elisa the day before, Elisa was lucky enough to escape suspicion. When no solid clues were found among the staff, the supervisor angrily lashed out, cursing them as a useless bunch. Back at home, Giles, who was alone, was deeply fascinated by the beautiful mermaid. He pulled up a chair and began sketching him. However, due to his age, he lacked energy, and while drawing, he eventually dozed off. Seizing the opportunity, the mermaid quietly slipped out of the bathroom. As he cautiously explored the house, the cat noticed this unexpected visitor and began hissing at him. But the cat was no match for the mermaid. Within moments, it fell prey to him. Giles, who had just woken up, witnessed the scene and screamed in terror. Startled by the screams, the mermaid fled the room and, in the chaos, injured Giles's arm. Terrified, Giles immediately called Elisa for help. When Elisa rushed home and saw the injured Giles, she knew that finding the mermaid was the most urgent matter. Following the trail of blood he had left behind, they finally found him inside a movie theater. Fortunately, the cinema was empty at the time, so no commotion occurred. The mermaid was completely absorbed in the film. As soon as he saw Elisa, the fear in his eyes gradually faded, and he willingly followed her back home. Realizing his mistake, the mermaid did not attack any other pets again. Instead, he began playing with them in a friendly manner. Seeing Giles's injury, he felt deeply guilty and placed his hand on Giles's bald head and wounded arm to apologize. The next day, a miraculous event occurred. As Giles stood in front of the mirror adjusting his clothes, he noticed fine hair growing on the bald spot on his head, and the wound on his arm had completely healed. It was then that he realized the mermaid also possessed healing abilities. This discovery filled him with astonishment and joy, deepening his affection for the mermaid even further. As the days passed, Elisa was no longer satisfied with communicating solely through sign language. One day, she took out a greeting card and began teaching the mermaid how to recognize letters. Although the male merman could neither read nor write, he was still able to understand the friendship reflected in Eliza's eyes. After that, whenever Eliza found time, she stayed in the bathroom, sharing her feelings with the merman. Living together day after day, she unknowingly fell in love with him, and from Eliza's shy glances, the merman too understood what was in her heart. At that moment, the merman took the initiative and gently lifted the collar of Eliza's clothes. Seeing this, Eliza panicked. She could hardly believe that the one before her had completely understood her unspoken feelings. After remaining torn by hesitation for a long time, she finally listened to her heart. Wearing an attractive night dress, she went into the bathroom nervously and spent tender moments with the merman. After this experience, a glow appeared on Eliza's face. She not only bought the high heels she liked, but even wore them straight to work. From that day on, Eliza became even more daring. One day, she closed the bathroom door, first stuffed towels into the cracks, then blocked the drain and turned on the tap. The water level slowly kept rising until she and the merman let the entire bathroom fill with water. Then they held each other tightly, and beneath the water, felt as if they were meeting on the ocean floor. But downstairs, the cinema hall turned directly into a water cave. The cinema owner came upstairs and began knocking loudly on Eliza's door, demanding an explanation. Hearing the noise, Giles came out in a panic and handled the situation, saying, "I'll get the pipes fixed immediately." The owner's anger subsided and he left, muttering to himself. Later, Giles went to check Eliza's room. As soon as he slightly opened the bathroom door, a powerful surge of water burst out. Seeing Eliza and the merman clinging to each other inside, Giles quietly closed the door again. Later, he congratulated Eliza from the bottom of his heart and even painted a portrait of the two of them as a couple. The arrival of the merman had brought peace to their monotonous lives, but this beautiful time did not last long. Having been away from seawater for too long, the merman's strength began to fade and his body grew weaker. It would still take time for the canal to connect to the sea. Helpless, Eliza could only hold him and cry. Days passed. After a torrential rain, The water level in the canal rose, and at last the day came to send the merman home. It was extremely difficult for Eliza to part from him, but for his health and safety, she had no choice but to let him go. Meanwhile, an officer issued a final warning to the supervisor. Find the merman within 36 hours or be dismissed from the job. To save his position, the supervisor immediately launched an investigation, but it yielded nothing. After calming down and thinking it through, he remembered that the scientist Tom had once fiercely opposed dissecting the merman. Perhaps the theft was connected to him. Quietly, he got into his car and drove to the scientist's house. At the same time, scientist Tom received an order from the Soviet government to withdraw. He hurriedly packed his belongings and set out for the evacuation point. But what was being called an evacuation plan was, in fact, a deadly trap. The government had already discovered Tom's secret of saving the merman and had decided to eliminate him as an uncontrollable pawn. As soon as the scientist reached the evacuation site, agents in disguise opened fire on him. Just as one of them was about to deliver the final blow, the supervisor arrived from behind and killed the agent. He dragged the scientist aside, took out an electric baton, and tried to interrogate him about the merman's whereabouts. After brutal torture, the scientist managed to utter only one word, Zelda, and then passed away. As soon as the truth comes to light, the officer immediately gets into his car and rushes to Zelda's house. Without wasting any time on formalities, he starts pressuring her directly, demanding to know the whereabouts of the male merman. Despite the officer's repeated questioning, Zelda remains silent. Just then, her husband steps forward and reveals the truth, that Eliza has taken the male merman with her. In fact, he had discovered their secret through a phone conversation between Zelda and Eliza. The moment he gets this lead, the officer heads straight for Eliza's house. Meanwhile, Zelda urgently calls Eliza to warn her. However, her husband, desperate to avoid trouble, tries to stop her. This is when Zelda finally loses her patience. Be quiet. You are a weak man. Saying this, she explains the entire situation to Eliza and tells her to escape immediately with the male merman. By the time the officer arrives at Eliza's house, panting for breath, Eliza and Giles have already left with the merman. Enraged at returning empty-handed, the officer fumes in anger. Just then, his eyes fall on a time and address written on the calendar, and he immediately sets off in pursuit. On the other side, Giles and Eliza have already supported the merman all the way to the riverbank. Before parting, Giles bids him farewell with a heavy heart. After living together for so many days, the merman had become like family to him. He hopes that once the merman returns to the sea, he will live a healthy and carefree life. Eliza then steps forward to say goodbye to the merman, but at that very moment, the officer arrives. He first strikes Giles with a baton, knocking him to the ground. Then he fires a shot, followed by another shot aimed at Eliza. Facing death, Eliza tightly grips the merman's hand one last time. In a world that constantly pushes disabled people to the margins, it was the merman who had given her the love and warmth she had been deprived of for so long. If she were given another life, she would want to love the merman freely, beyond the rules and restrictions of this world. With this thought, she slowly closes her eyes. But in the very next moment, the merman awakens. He stands up, heals his wounds, and then attacks the officer. After that, he lifts Eliza in his arms and jumps into the river. Underwater, he gently kisses her, and a miracle occurs. Eliza regains consciousness. The 3 scars on her neck transform into fish-like gills, allowing her to breathe underwater. Her legs turn into a beautiful fishtail. At last, Eliza and the merman become husband and wife, living freely and happily in the sea. And with this, today's film story comes to an end. Don't forget to like, comment, and share. And if you're new to our channel, make sure to hit the subscribe button as well.